Welcome to the Rotoworld Football Show. It is week 4. We are previewing it. We being me, Patrick Daugherty, Kyle Dvorchak, Denny Carter. Game of the century. Bills, Dolphins, Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern. It's unfortunately not on NBC. Jets, Chiefs will be on NBC Sunday night. A little person you may have heard of called Taylor Swift is going to be there. And hopefully it's not the only reason to watch.
Yeah, I was going to say, now we have a reason.
Jets looking very powerfully into making that game unwatchable. We really hope they do not. We have Falcons and Jaguars in London. We have Commanders, Eagles, Bengals, Titans, Vikings, Panthers with Bryce Young returning. Yet another big slate of games. We're going to talk about all of them. Just what's your state of mind, guys? Week 4, are you the Joker yet? Is your personal happiness Jover? How are you guys doing heading into the 4th week of the NFL season?
The fact that there are like 4 waiver wire running backs in the top 12 in the rankings this week makes me pretty happy.
Yeah. Oh wow. That actually makes you happy?
It makes me happy because it works for my redraft teams. It works very well.
Exactly. If you draft the way Denny and I do, it's been a solid run out to start the season.
Well, it's true. You know what? I got both worlds on that front. I have a home league where my first 2 picks were Jamar Chase and Devontae Adams. Guess how many points I had after 2 weeks? The fewest, the absolute fewest, until a man by the name of Jerry Ford came and saved the day in week 3. And I had the most points in week 3. So sure, it had more to do with Jamar Chase and Devontae Adams finally playing watchable football. But
you should have spread the points they scored in week 3 back into weeks 2 and 1, because I assume you just destroyed your opponent in week 3.
I did. I mean, not to get to the terminology, the official terminology is that I put them in a body bag. My friend's dad. That's not a joke. I was playing my friend's dad.
And your friend forgives you. It's part of the game. You know, it's part of the game. You put your opponent in the bag. By the way, I was playing against Devontae Adams. Actually, Mike Clay from ESPN had Devontae Adams against me on Sunday night. And I had a big lead on Mike. And I was really trying my best to beat old Mike, because Mike beats me every time. And I saw that the Steelers were going to do the single coverage, man coverage on Devontae Adams throughout, and I threw up.
And is that the Apex League, by the way?
That is
I did the exact same thing to Sigmund Bloom, only I had Jamar Chase, and he did the same thing to Sigmund Bloom, and I resigned from the Apex League.
Right, and I knew you knew you're dead. Like in the first quarter, I was like, I can't survive this, because the Steelers have said we're going to let Devontae Adams get whatever he wants, and that was bad for me.
That happens like 6 times a year, where the Steelers are like, the opponent's number 1 receiver, one of our linebackers can handle him. And Keenan Allen did it to them like 2 years ago, I think, late in the season, and ripped like a 30 ball or something, and they do that incredibly often for a team that is generally pretty smart, well coached, especially in the defensive side of the ball. Shockingly okay with the number 1 receiver dropping a 15, 150 and 2 line on him.
It's so true. The Keenan Allen game was legendary. It was a linebacker covering Keenan Allen. Anyways, we'll get into the main slate here. The Miami Dolphins and Buffalo Bills' latest game of the century takes place in Buffalo, New York, with the home team operating as a 2.5-point favorite against the Miami squad that you may have heard just scored 70 points on the Denver Broncos. Denny Carter, we already talked about this a little on Tuesday, but what are realistic expectations for Devin Achane, one of the biggest parts of that absolute round for the Dolphins, now known as Devin Achane, by the way. After his career week 3, we've covered he's probably never going to have a better game as long as he plays NFL football, even if he's a star. He was already rostered in a lot of leagues. He's now rostered in probably 98% of leagues. What are realistic expectations for Devin Achane?
I think, low end RB2 with some upside, with a lot of upside, because he can, break any kind of long run he wants if he gets the opportunity. The Bills, it's hard to figure out if the Bills are a good matchup for running backs or a terrible matchup, because
I know they allow 5.9 yards per carry, but what's the other side of that coin?
Well, but that's skewed bigly by the Jets going bananas against them on the opening in week 1. And since then, they've actually been pretty good I hesitate to say that this is a great spot for Achane, who, by the way, when he was in college, he told reporters apparently to call him Achane. So we're very confused here. Anyway,
you drop a 50 burger on on your
what it
first
is.
real game, you can call yourself whatever you want. I mean, he has to drop 40 again to change the name, but every time you do that legally, you are allowed to change your name.
Kyle, I actually think that that's the case. Like, I'm like, look at me now. Like I'm gonna be called what I want to be called. It's Achane.
I'm gonna invent a silent E.
Yes, and congrats on that. So I think you can expect like a 60-40 split in the backfield at best for Achane. I think that it could be 65-35, something like that. Don't get too nuts with Achane. I actually think that in a 10-team league, you might be in a position where you don't have to play him. Is that weird to say?
How do you think? Danny and I talked about this a lot already this week. What is your take on this, Kyle? We probably talked about this on the waiver show also. But what's a realistic, just to start with, touch count against the Bills? Is 10 to 12 too low, too high? How does that sound to you for Devin Achane touches?
I mean, I expect this to be obviously Vegas also expects to be a high scoring, high pace game. So I think that could again inflate the numbers this week in terms of total touches. For this game, I'd probably project him over a dozen, probably closer to 13, 14. And he's going to be it's hard to say he won't be the most efficient running back on a per touch basis over a large sample. That's just what this offense does. And that's what he's going to do. But when you're working with 12 to 14 touches as your expectation, you don't get in the end zone once and you're in line for 9 PPR points or something. So that's going to be volatile. We also saw last week that if he breaks 2 long plays, which he's relative to the rest of the league, very likely to do on his 14 touches, 30 points is in the range of outcomes. So I think I have him ranked as RB 25 or 6. I have to go back and check my rankings, but I think I moved some stuff around and noticed that he just fell out of the RB2 range. And he could finish as the RB2 overall. That is the range of outcomes. It's so wide, but I think it's worth chasing because I want guys who can score a lot of points on my fantasy rosters. That might surprise people. It might even offend some people. But the guys who can drop 30 in a given week, I don't care what their floor is. Play those guys.
Yeah, I actually do agree with you. And looking at the rushing metrics for the Bills defense, I'm seeing now that the Bills are among the worst in allowing yards before contact, and that's the sort of thing that you don't want to give up against an explosive guy like Achane.
Yeah,
I have Achane right inside the top 24. I believe RB 23 or 24. The looming specter here is Jeff Wilson supposedly returning from injured reserve in Week 5. So yet another variable in this Dolphins backfield where we don't know what Achane's workload is going to be like. We know Raheem Mostert wears down as every season goes on. We know everyone who's ever had a phone call with Kyle Shanahan loves Jeff Wilson, especially as a goal line back for some reason. So they just love the guy. So we'll see what happens in the backfield. This scoring environment, though, you can call him an RB2. Maybe it's very borderline in Kyle's case, but you can call him an RB2. Kyle, so we're talking about the Bills and how things are kind of hard to judge because things were so out of whack from that Jets game. That included that disastrous Josh Allen hero ball. And he's been very buttoned up and restrained the past 2 weeks. We've gotten station to station Josh Allen for basically the first time in his NFL career. It's still been profitable in fantasy, but which of the two Joshes should we expect to see in a game where the total is 54 points, by far the highest of Week 4?
Yeah, like you said, it's a game where we expect a lot of back and forth, extremely high total. And to me, that's the perfect hero ball. I guess a low scoring, but also close game like we saw in Week 1 is also a hero ball, Josh Allen type of performance. It just, you can tell it was Josh Allen hero ball performance by the fact that there are a bunch of interceptions. Sometimes they run good. He gets Gabe Davis downfield, and that's night for the opponents. Sometimes overthrows, double coverage, interception, quite easy. But I think either way, the style is that it is probably more fun, exciting Josh Allen as the game gets closer. And I expect this to be a close game, as does Vegas. So, and I think it's probably to some degree overblown by the Week 2, I don't know performance, but the Week 2 ADOT that was sub 6, I believe, by Josh Allen. His other 2 games are ADOTs well over 8 and over 10. So I think it's reasonable to expect a slightly lower target depth for him versus previous years. They're clearly loading up on talent at tight end. Last year, they signed Dawson Knox $50 million contract. Seems like a lot for Dawson Knox.
Cole Kmet laughs at that.
Yeah. Yeah, Cole Kmet saw that and like, I'll take one of those and the fries on the side, please.
Yes.
And then they go out and draft Dalton Kincaid. Also last year drafted James Cook, who is known as a strong pass catching running back. All of this is to say that they're working, I think, to give him options to throw too short. It's not going to change the nature of who he is. I still think he is this wild, reckless abandon and good at that quarterback. They're doing their efforts to give him options in the short and intermediate range. He's not always going to throw to them. Sometimes he's just chucking it to Gabe Davis, and that's who he is. And almost certainly who he always will be. And this is a spot where that should come out.
Denny, not many questions on the other side with the Dolphins. It's an elite offense. It's a narrow target distribution in fantasy. Tua Tagovailoa has re-proven he's one of the best fantasy quarterbacks when he can stay healthy in this system. But Jalen Waddle, by his 2022 standards, is off to something of a slow start. You put here in the show sheet, 4 catches for 78 yards, 4 for 86. I think those were his 2 stat lines. A little quieter than we're used to expect, or we at least expect more blow-ups mixed in. Then he had a concussion. Anything in the underlying data to suggest maybe this would be a trend for Jalen Waddle, or is it just a small sample size fluke?
I think it's the latter for sure. I look very strongly at all of his underlying metrics: yards per route run, slot rate, target share, air yard share. It's all extremely similar to last season. His ADOT, his average depth of target, has crept up a little bit this season, but again, very small sample. His catchable ball rate is a little lower. Okay, wow. But Tua
Jover.
I think we'll be okay if you have. The
funniest thing, Denny, is that last year you pointed out, or in the offseason, and you were correct in pointing out that he couldn't, it's very hard to lead the NFL in yards per reception. I think north of 18. That's just not sticky. That's a stat that doesn't hang year over year. He's at 20 right now, yards per reception. I think, again, it's fair to assume these numbers will scale back. But as is the case with essentially every Dolphin that actually sees the ball, they're going to be one of the most efficient players at their position. Tyreek Hill, it is safe to say, will probably continue to lead the league in yards per route run until he falls off. For as many years as that is, he's going to be the best at that. Jalen Waddle, yards per reception, you might not project him 420 in a given year. You probably shouldn't, but he's going to be the guy you project to lead the league in yards per reception. So, like you said, he looks like the same guy. And honestly, 2 games of 75 and 86 yards or whatever they were, it's good. That's not a sign for concern. It's just we haven't gotten the blow up yet.
He was going to have a blow up against the Chargers. He had to leave the game with a concussion. That was coming. So
he would have destroyed the Broncos. Everyone on that field destroyed the Broncos. He just wasn't active for that game.
Right.
James Cook, real quick. Is this happening? Looking like an RB1, even without the goal line. So it's weird. It seemed like everyone was right. I was like, is this guy Chase Edmonds? The answer is sort of yes, but he's much better than Chase Edmonds. Is it that simple, or is it happening, Denny Carter, for James Cook in the top 10?
Oh, it's happening, and it's happening without any of the stuff that we wanted near the goal line. And you just have to accept that if you drafted James Cook, you've enjoyed it over 3 weeks. It's been good for PPR purposes, especially. But you have to accept that if you watch a Bills game, you're going to see Latavius Murray score the touchdown at the 1. Okay, that's just going to happen, and that's okay. That's all right. Where you drafted him in the 6th round, you're good. At least 16 touches in every game. Dolphins are allowing the 2nd highest yards before contact per attempt. That means, that correlates closely with long runs, with explosive runs. And Dolphins have given up the 2nd highest rushing success rate. One of my pet theories, guys, from last week, and I don't know if I shared this with you, Pat, during the wrap-up show, but Javonte Williams was going to have a big day against the Dolphins. It was going to happen, and they just simply couldn't run the ball anymore when they got down 70-20. They couldn't run the ball anymore. So
usually it's hard to establish when you're down 50.
Yeah, hard. It is tough. I think that there's a chance that the Bills kind of establish it here. I like Cook a lot.
Javonte Williams is going to have a big game this week against the Bears. We're going to have a big short break and be right back after this. NBA training camp starts soon, and here is your chance to get an assist with your fantasy draft with the Rotoworld Basketball Draft Guide. Visit NBCSports.com and use promo code HOOPS23 at checkout to score a 20% discount, a $10 e-gift card to Fanatics, and free season-long tools with your draft guide purchase. It'll be really good stuff from Raphael and the boys over on the NBA side, but we're here to talk about football. We're here to talk about football guys. Arthur Smith, Doug Peterson, the King of England, because this game's being played in London yet again for some reason. The Falcons and Jaguars head to London town with the Jags running as 3-point favorites despite their poor start. Kyle, what is ailing this Jaguars offense and how might it turn around?
Look, I get this is going to sound like cope, but the Jags are kind of running bad on a lot of not super sticking things.
And he's coping.
I'm definitely coping a little bit. Like I get it. It's not only does it sound like cope, it's kind of a little bit of cope. But like we talk about stuff like drops or like third down conversion rate. They're doing terrible in those. They lead the NFL in drops. They have 9 drops from all of their pass catchers. A bunch of teams are tied with 7. They've lost the most EPA in the NFL on drops. They have their 21st in red zone touchdown rate. They're 28th in EPA on third downs, and they're 29th in third down conversion rate over expected. These are things that I expect. They might not be great, right? Like, I don't think this is a team where, like I said, Mike McDaniel, I think you should just project his teams, any metric you want, project them to be above average. This is probably just an average team in terms of really deep strategic value, but they're not terrible, and they have a lot of talent, and we saw that last year when they had less talent. So I'm not really buying that they're dead to rights at this point. Trevor Lawrence, also, I believe, top 3 in the NFL in PFF big-time throw rate, and he's also the top 25 in turnover-worthy play rate. Like, he's looking the best he has ever looked. His receivers just can't catch the damn ball. They're not bad though. Like he's not playing with scrubs. I think they'll get it together, but maybe I'm wrong and they just keep dropping passes and they keep running bad in the red zone. They keep running bad on third downs, but I don't think they'll keep running bad on all those things. Maybe some of them, but they will almost certainly be better. I'd take that pretty confidently.
Denny, do you have a Jaguars thought there? Or are you
No,
ready?
I mean, Kyle's right. Look, Trevor Lawrence's numbers are horrific. Like the metrics are not kind. Like he's in like the Zach Wilson territory in some regards.
EPA.
Yeah, so that's bad. But if Calvin Ridley holds on to that touchdown last week against the Texans, I think we are singing a different tune on this offense. And the Falcons defense is exploitable. I think this is not an eruption spot, but a get right spot.
Get right spot.
Denny, are you singing a different tune after Bijan Robinson played 81% of the snaps last week? Curious, huh? Interesting.
We're getting there.
Is the blow up week finally here for Bijan, who was on the field for over 80% of the snaps in week 3? Did not correlate to a strong box score though. It's still been like fits, stops, and starts where he's getting tantalizingly close, but he has not quite been there yet. What is your Bijan outlook for week 4?
Yeah, us at the Tyler Algier Corporation, we have not issued a statement on that 81% snap share. We're going to be back. We'll get back to you as soon as we can on that.
The crisis comms team is in disarray. Has not drafted the statement yet.
We are. You may hear we're reeling. We're not reeling. But this is a terrible matchup, actually. Sorry, but only Cleveland, which is insane numbers so far defensively. Only Cleveland has a lower success rate or a better success rate against the rush than the Jags. Jags have allowed the second lowest explosive rush rate through 3 games. This, folks, is why the Jaguars are the second most extreme pass funnel in the entire league, just behind the Niners.
You know who doesn't care? I got a guy who
has
not seen such stats.
No, that's right. No. It does not matter against the Falcons. I want to emphasize that.
I will say that is against running backs too. That included week 1, a bunch of Deion Jackson touches for the Colts, then the Chiefs,
within
then
2
the
weeks,
Texans. They haven't faced anyone even close to Bijan Robinson or anyone even close to Tyler Algier yet. But the stats.
He threw you a little bone with that Tyler Algier thing. That was nice.
Wait, real quick. Bijan has been elite, by every measure so far. And also, I wanted to mention that Atlanta is targeting running backs at the league's second highest rates. That's part of the reason Bijan leads all running backs in receptions. And folks, listen, if you have Drake London, you're not going to like this stat. No one has targeted receivers at a lower rate than the Falcons, and it's not even close. Okay, they're at the bottom by a mile. 35% of the targets this season have gone to wide receivers for Atlanta.
There are like single receivers that have a 35% target share. It's the best of them, but like Devontae Adams can get a 35% target share.
Yeah.
And all like 7 or whatever active roster receivers on the Falcons cannot get to that number in the aggregate. That I didn't realize how bad that was. My God.
Yeah, Kyle, I was going to ask you what's even left to say about Kyle Pitts and Drake London, and I think you just said it, that it's just jaw-dropping. We're dumbstruck and there's no real cope for the situation. It's just real bad.
Here's the worst part. I'm sorry to interrupt, Kyle, but the Falcons target the tight end position at the highest rate in the NFL.
Yeah, I think the cope with Pitts is. I think the cope with Pitts is they're using him like a receiver. Like he's got a 19% target share and a 47% air yard share because they're not throwing to their receivers. The way you move the chains, if you are not throwing to your receivers, has to be through the athletic tight end. So he's got great market share numbers. And I've said this before, but like tight end is just dreadful. Like Donald Parham is probably the tight end 3 or something just absurd. Tight end's been bad as I can remember.
Are you triggered by touchdowns, Kyle?
I do. The thing is, I'm triggered by most of these tight end touchdowns I don't like. But as a 2020 XFL fan, I'm actually very excited to see Donald Parham popping off. So he's the one exception I'll make for this. Like, I played this guy at 3,200 in DFS and he was 4%. I can't believe so-and-so scoring. He's allowed to burn me like that. It's fine. It's fine because he's legit. But point I'm making is like, Kyle Pitts gets you 3 points and it like literally doesn't matter. You've lost no ground. He still has insane weekly upside, but we're going to see it so infrequently that the cope I have is tight end sucks. And he's among the guys who aren't scoring a lot of points.
Denny just arched an eyebrow at Kyle, almost word for word saying there's no difference between good and bad things.
I don't know.
The problem is there are no good things. We have like 2
No,
good tight
wait
ends.
a sec.
Kind of what you were saying.
You could get Taysom Hill right now and play him over Pitts.
Ooh, no, you could not.
No,
you got to give up that obsession. The league's 2 most, we'll talk about it later. The league's 2 most embattled teams are squaring off in Chicago, Illinois, with the Bears hosting the Broncos as 3.5-point underdogs. Denny, we will start with Justin Fields. We said last week it was now or never. What does that make this week?
It's never.
Very much never in week 3.
Okay, I actually have in pouring over the numbers, I have a stat that might mean nothing, but I just had to share it with the folks. Justin Fields in week 3 against Kansas City converted 20% of his air yards into actual yards. Okay. That's actually like unbelievable. Like I can't believe it. So really bad stuff from Justin Fields. But you know what we got? We got some design rushes. We got 7 design rushes for 47 yards from Justin Fields against the Chiefs. Okay. So 4.7 fantasy points there. 11 rushes overall against the Chiefs. He remains near the bottom of every category passing wise. I don't know. I just don't think that there's any like getting out of that for Fields in this offense. He's going to have to do it with his legs against Denver. Even though Denver's secondary stinks, he's still going to have to do it with his legs.
My fear in this game where the Broncos are a great matchup for Justin Fields, but Justin Fields is also a great matchup for a struggling defense. My fear is that is what is going to take the day, that Justin Fields is just what the doctor ordered for the Broncos and not vice versa. Because how could that not be the takeaway after watching his first 3 games, basically?
Yeah, I kind of agree.
Kyle, on the other side, Javonte Williams' usage has been really solid through the first 3 weeks. At least I think it has. I didn't dig too deep into that. It seems like it's been solid. The fantasy points have not followed. Does that change here against the Chicago Bears, who cannot stop anything?
Yeah, it does look like a good spot. He is right now a carry share in terms of his overall cut of the pie, just around 60%. It's basically within 5% of that every single week. Strangely, they have Samaje Perine, so I get why they're doing it, but they're not using him a ton out of the backfield. He's drawing targets at a high clip, but he's only run a route on 30% of the team's drop back. So I think for Javonte, at least the way they're using him right now is that they're clear between the tackles back, but they've been losing so much. They've been losing all the time and often quite horrifically that you just can't play him when you think, which seems to be the case fairly often, they're going to be losing. The good news is they've got a winnable one on their hands in this week. So yeah, like you said, the usage has been there, especially in terms of his cut of the overall carries, specifically carries, not as much targets. And that makes him sort of like in the Brian Robinson range of he's going to be really matchup dependent. And his team, like Brian Robinson's, not particularly good. So it's hard to know when to start him. But this is the one, as you point out. If we're ever going to get the Javonte machine firing, it's against this bad defense where they are favorites, which will be rare for the Broncos, it seems at least this year. So I like this spot for him, though I think for him to be like an every week starter, he has to at least get a larger cut of the routes. He doesn't have to completely shut Samaje Perine out. Few running backs shut out their backup, but he needs to be at least a little more versatile outside of this week. This is a good one.
Danny, anything to say about the Bears receivers? DJ Moore had a good week 2. He got the garbage time touchdown in week 3. still seems fairly bleak on the whole. Chase Claypool isn't doing anything to quell talk that he should maybe be a healthy scratch. What do we tell people about the Bears receivers?
Well, first thing I want to tell you, Pat, is that Chase Claypool continues running as the wide receiver 2 for the Bears, ahead of Darnell Mooney last week against the Chiefs.
Not worried about it in Dynasty. I'm not worried about it at all.
Really something. Mooney only played 65% or only ran 65% of the routes against Kansas City. That's a little bit of a concern if you're for some reason holding on to him. DJ Moore is once again, as he always is, commanding an absurd chunk of the air yards and the targets, and nothing has changed really. Bears have targeted wide receivers on 50% of the team's targets. That is the second lowest rate in the league behind the aforementioned Falcons. So nobody's going to get home. Like, one guy might get home per week, and you bank on it being DJ Moore. There's really nobody else there to start.
Very quickly, do either of you have anything of value to say about the Bears backfield? And if not, we can just literally move on.
It's tough. I mean,
I second that motion.
Right,
Yeah.
we're not going to talk about it. Just Google it or something. The Eagles welcome the Commanders to the city of brotherly love as 8-point favorites. DeAndre Swift has taken the league by storm over the past 2 weeks. He barely played in week 1. I think is second in the league in rushing. But Kenneth Gainwell still handled 15 week 3 touches. Can we trust DeAndre Swift as an RB1, or is it still just a little too volatile, still a little too big play dependent?
Yeah, RB1. I don't have him ranked as an RB1. I have him as a very high upside RB2. But last week, and I think last week it looks closer than it really was. I believe Swift outcarried Kenneth Gainwell, quote, just 16-14. But 6 of Gainwell's carries came on the final drive where the game was over. It was a 2-possession game. They're just trying to efficiently run out the clock. That's what they did. But before then, it was very clear that they had come into the game saying they were going to ride the hot hand. And Swift's hands were on fire. Like, he's clearly just extremely explosive. And the Eagles' incredible run blocking makes it so what we saw in Detroit was that this dude, boy, does he struggle to follow blocks. You know what makes that really easy? If there are just holes you can drive trucks through, and then you get this man into open space and he's untackleable. So this is the perfect setup for him where, I mean, Detroit's run blocking was good, but this team is truly otherworldly in how good they are and how effective the quarterback is at drawing the eyes of linebackers. So I think the only concerns for me is that the quarterback is the best goal line back in the NFL, and Gainwell isn't shut out. Like I said with Javonte, there's still a clear cutout role for the backup. So I'm going to have Swift as like a volatile RB2, but I don't even know if it's that volatile, frankly. If you're giving me, he feels more like I said, A-Chain's like, oh, you're hoping to get 12. Swift, especially in any game where they're not playing an opponent that can really go toe-to-toe with them, this is not one of those games. You're probably locked in for 15 plus carries, and I expect him to be extremely efficient. So you're just banking on, do I get 100 yards and no touchdown or 100 yards and 2 touchdowns? Both are in play.
I mean, to be honest, that's why I put him in the top 12 and I really didn't worry about it that much just because there's no volatility with the way this offensive line road paves. And like you said, if you can, DeAndre Swift, if he's behind a road paving line and he gets out in space, I mean, that's major problems for the defense. This was each of the past 2 weeks. And some weeks there are clearly going to be letdowns where it's like 13 carries for 40 yards. He just doesn't hit the big play or two. But I think it's become at this point where the big game is more likely than not. And that if he stayed healthy, I think RB1 numbers are just inevitable. And I got to keep him in the top 12 for that reason. And I'll say something totally different about it next week when he has one bad game. Denny, what is going on with these Commanders receivers? Nothing usable from Terry McLaurin, nothing usable from Jahan Dotson. Sam Howell taking a lot of sacks, throwing a lot of picks. What can I tell people about the Washington wideouts?
Right. Our own Zach Kruger was on local DC radio talking about Sam Howell taking all the sacks. And this has been an issue throughout his football career, not just in the NFL, also in college, all the way back to middle school, really. So
he just wants to feel something.
I appreciate Zach Kruger for bringing the analytics to radio. I mean, it's miserable right now. I actually had to like triple check this before the show because I didn't believe it, but McLaurin and Dotson have each seen one target over 20 yards through 3 games. Okay.
Not great.
Okay. Sam Howell has the lowest downfield throwing rate of any quarterback in the league. being sacked at an historic clip. Powell's been terrible. He has the league's second worst rate on target throws. The team is 30th in target share to receivers. There's no hope until this team is forced to make the switch to Jacoby Brissett, which I would say is probably a week or two away.
I think we're close. The NFL record for sacks in a game, I don't think they started tracking sacks until like the 70s or 80s or something, maybe in the 90s. But just for this purpose, the NFL record is 76. Would you guys like to venture a guess? He's on pace to set the record. How many sacks is he on pace for? 176 is the record.
100. He's on track for 104. That's what I thought.
Pat.
No?
I'm not trying to do math in my head, even though I actually badly went to. I just didn't want to come out wide. It's like 112, I believe, though.
You guys actually split the middle perfectly. It's 108. I'm actually impressed you guys both got so close. 108. He's on pace for 32 more sacks than the most sacks anyone's ever taken. He's also on pace for like 28 interceptions, which isn't the record. It's not like extremely close. It'd be like a top 20 season, though. I think you just can't play like this. It's completely unsustainable with these mistakes, too. It's one thing to see someone like Josh Dobbs go out, and he's not awfully impressive, but he does not make mistakes. He keeps the team on schedule and doesn't do things that a coach sees and needs to bench. Is he like a talent elevator? Almost certainly not. But when you see Sam Howell go out and make the mistakes he makes, that's really the quickest way to get benched. And that's the path we're on right now.
Yeah. I mean, it's like Howell's bad. It's Jover. Like yes, no, Pat, I know you're grimacing, but it is.
I need him for one more week. Justin Herbert's on bye in my 2 QB league, and just need him one more week, week 5.
I mean, there's a pretty decent chance he doesn't make it through this game.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a tough matchup, and it's such a tough pass rush matchup. And you know who doesn't handle pass rush well? It's Sam Howell. So, yeah, it is.
He's going to learn on the fly.
Yeah. So listen, you can't start Dotson in any format. I guess you can start McLaurin if you have like multiple flex spots, but that's it. It's that bleak for Washington.
Kyle, really quick, anything illuminating on the Commanders' backfield? Is it still as simple as Brian Robinson, 2 down back? We in good matchups, maybe he'll get some touchdowns.
Yeah, that about checks out for me. Antonio Gibson hasn't topped 5 touches in a game yet. Completely unusable. But as we expected, we're not getting targets for Brian Robinson. You can probably still play him this week because he's a good bet for 15 carries. But it's 15 relatively inefficient carries that probably aren't coming near the goal line. So you can play him as in he's like a very low ceiling flex option. I try to avoid playing him if I can. Just some people don't have other options.
Sounds like you guys would start Kenny Pickett over Sam Howell this week, by the way. I'm asking for a friend.
Yeah. Yep.
For a friend who is
there's your actionable advice for this episode, guys.
His name is Patrick D. I know it's too obvious. Let's say P. Daugherty. And that's a joke I stole from The Simpsons. 2 of the league's least inspiring teams, Cincinnati and Tennessee, meet up in Nashville with the Bengals as 2-point favorites. Denny, part of Joe Burrow's slow start has been an absolutely brutal schedule. Can he finally get on track against the Titans' very burnable pass defense on the old Cumberland River?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, the calf thing obviously is still not right. You know, like when he's questioned about it, Joe Burrow evades and like doesn't say anything real about how he's feeling. It seems like
as someone injects like the world's largest needle into his calf, like while he's giving the interview, it's fine.
It honestly seems like the Bengals have removed the stretch play handoff to Mixon from their playbook because Burrow can't move. He can't move like that right now. You know, that's a problem. I actually wrote about Joe Burrow in this week's regression files, which you can find on the site. I don't know how the calf is going to heal, how long that's going to take. But I think things should normalize for Joe Burrow going forward. This is obviously a get right spot. The writing will be got, I think, for Joe Burrow. He has the NFL's lowest air yards conversion rate through week 3, which is really, really out of whack. If you look at his past 2 years, last year, Joe Burrow had the 5th best rate of air yards converting, that whole thing. In 2021, he led everyone. He led all quarterbacks with converting the air yards. So I think we can inch toward that, normalization. It'll be good for everybody, and especially for T. Higgins here.
I forgot to put any follow-up questions for this game, but the Bengals much more gettable on the ground. It's only a 2-point spread. Can the Derrick Henry-led Titans run game finally get going? Tajay Spears doesn't seem like he's going to outsnap him this week.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if Kyle disagrees. I think that Henry is actually in a great spot if game script can stay normal, can stay somewhat like sane here. I think that that Henry is in for a good workload. Bengals give up the most yards before contact per attempt, so let's go. Let's get Henry in those lines. The analytics nerds want to dismiss Henry for the 14th straight year. I refuse.
We really do. He is out here struggling in the advanced metrics, but it's a 3-game sample on the best runner this side of like 2015, probably. I think it's safe to say. Maybe, yeah, that's about right. Sounds about right. So, and we've seen a slow start for him before, and I don't even think that it was whatever excuse we made for him. I think it was actually last year. He had something like 159 or 190 rushing yards through 3 games, averaging like 60, 70 yards, which is fine for like a Brian Robinson type, but it's not what you expect from the big dog. And then he went on to average like 130 yards per game for the rest of the season. These things are kind of fluky, though we do need to keep our finger on the pulse of like his rush yards over expected and success rate, because they are tumbling badly. It's something that if it continues for another few weeks, we do have to start saying, is this guy changed from the person we saw in previous years? But this seems like a decent spot, as Denny said.
And even the advanced stats, it might not be him. It might just be Ryan Tannehill being a sitting duck. And we have to hope that like Trey Hendrickson just doesn't single-handedly wreck the game, because he was kind of doing
as he did for the Rams. He was tearing apart Stafford, and that seems like a very eerie foreshadowing of what he could do against now a statuesque Tannehill. But we'll see.
So we need Tannehill to be competitive for the big dog to even have any chance on reversing the statistical trend. The 0-3 Vikings are searching for their first victory in Charlotte as 4-point road favorites, Kyle. I pulled the plug on Alexander Mattison, no offense. In my week 4 rankings, it's nothing personal. But this is not a universal opinion. What can we expect from Cam Akers' first game in purple? I honestly think he's going to be the lead back for the Vikings. It doesn't seem like this is a widely held opinion, though. What do you think, Kyle?
I wouldn't project him to be the lead back, although it's concerning. Like, the thing is with Alexander Mattison is he's been particularly inefficient and had a really poor game last week. You need him to be getting all the work, because guys who are inefficient, they don't produce beyond, they're producing less than what they're expected to. He's the type of guy who, we're seeing it this year, he's not even getting what's really asked of him. The quote, good news, if you're ignoring the Cam Akers thing, is that per Established Runs Mike Leone, Madison had the most expected fantasy points of any running back last week. He did not capitalize on many of them. And the problem with that is that's a clear opening for Cam Akers to take work from him. My only sort of qualm with that theory is Akers ranks dead last in rush yards over expected, dead last in success rate. He's just hasn't been good this year. It's a small sample, so do with that what you will. I still think he is eased into the lineup, which is bad for Madison, but Madison's probably still playable this week, which that's not what you drafted him for. No, not by a long shot, but I think he's still flex worthy. He probably fell out of the RB2 range for me, frankly.
I moved him out of the RB2 range. Denny, where do you fall on Alexander Mattison? Because I do feel like I'm out of step with consensus this week.
Yeah, I mean, the people are telling you to calm down on Madison. No, but I mean, Madison is not good. And also, I think it's the fumbles that will really open up an opportunity.
The fumbles and a drop and getting stymied on the goal line. The box score lied very hardcore in week 3 for Alexander Mattison.
Yeah, head coach Kevin O'Connell was asked after their loss to the Chargers, like, what are you going to do about these fumbles, these turnovers? And he said, if the guys can't stop fumbling and turning it over, we will find someone who won't do that. And I think that was a direct shot over the bow of Madison. And so Akers will get a chance. Is Akers some like great back? No, of course not. I definitely think he can be way better than Madison. And I think that by week 5 or 6, maybe 7, it's not even a conversation. It's just the Akers backfield.
I really do just think that's happening now. Kevin O'Connell, he said 0 tolerance, by the way. Also, by the way, TJ Hawkinson cannot stop losing fumbles, and yet they keep targeting him like 4 to 5 times a game.
Hawkinson was horrific against the Chargers. Plainly dropped that touchdown to win the game into the hands of a defender. Got just handed the ball to a defender earlier in the game.
Yes, he did.
Dropped another one. I mean, I actually don't remember like a pass catcher having a worse game than Hawkinson. That was horrible.
Denny, is there any Bryce Young streamer love against this Vikings defense where if you want to run for 200 yards on them, easy. You want to pass for 400 yards on them, easy. Any Bryce Young? The whole community is like already out on Bryce Young. I know that includes you because he had like 1.5 bad games, so he's already a bust. But can you have any streamer love?
Oh man, but come on. It's worse than that. It's worse than
No, I think that's exactly what it is. In fact, I think that's a pretty accurate description.
Yeah. No, look. I mean, the fact that like it's inarguable that Andy Dalton gives this team a better chance to win right now.
I still don't know if I really agree with that. He needed 60 attempts to get like 320 yards.
And the Seahawks were without, I believe, if not one, both starting safeties, both starting corners. Like
I think if you give Bryce Young 60 attempts, he'd probably have the same production. They just don't want to do it.
All right. Well, I don't think there's any streaming appeal. I don't even think there's super flex appeal here for Bryce Young. I know the Vikings are bad. Like all the stats say they're bad, but I think the Carolina is a team that if they can establish a run, they're going to do it. And the Vikings are neither a pass nor a run funnel. So
they're an everything funnel because you can just literally do whatever you want against them.
So I don't know. I don't see the appeal for Young. Now Thielen is another story, but Young is. Oh, by the way, I have to say, Kyle, I'm sorry, but the Zoomers are taking a huge L on Adam Thielen.
One game
on that.
No, he had a good game the week before too. He is compiling. My buddy is out here ripping 7 yards of target right down the gut.
I love it.
Yeah, we'll see about that. Adam, what's this? You call this a good game? 7 catches for 54 yards.
He scored, and I think he had a 2-point conversion too.
He did have a touchdown.
And a tutter.
Well, that's a good time to take a break. We'll be right back after this. Do you have what it takes to lead the team to victory? Select your Ryder Cup fantasy team and play with your friends. Visit gamezone.rydercup.com to learn more and watch the Ryder Cup only on NBC, USA, and Peacock Friday to Sunday. And also, don't forget, find all your favorite NBC sports shows and Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. Denny, what percent of the Ryder Cup will you be watching this weekend? 88%, 90%, or 92%?
I'm going to go probably 50% because it's in Europe. How can you watch it?
You can watch it on the networks of NBC.
Yes.
And you're not watching every second of it. Very like
I think I'm just saying,
you need to at least get up and turn your TV on so we get the ratings or whatever.
The time. I of course I have Peacock streaming 24 hours a day in my home. Obviously, it's just I don't know if I'll be awake.
And a producer Adam saying the Euros. I'm not going to read his prediction on air. Actually, we're patriotic Americans. That's not.
He said something very un-American about the outcome potentially of this event, which I'm just now learning is Europe versus America. I guess.
Listen, we have a little guy named Scotty Scheffler. Ever heard of him? Adam, producer Adam. Mm-hmm.
And again, if you have ever heard of Patrick Reed, tell him to not sue Denny and I.
I'm actually
earlier this week.
I would like to start a letter writing campaign on that front.
He's very litigious. Please, Patrick Reed. We both have families. The Ravens and Browns are preparing for a Lake Erie slugfest with Vegas setting the over-under at only 40.5 points. Oh, my goodness gracious. And installing the Browns as field goal home favorites. Denny, we keep, quote, joking about how the Ravens look absolutely miserable, in their mood, not just their play, just their mood. But it's really not even a joke at this point. Just what is going wrong? Let's start with the Ravens passing attack. Why is nothing changed from last year, basically?
They still don't have anyone downfield. I mean, it's still everything is near the line of scrimmage and the intermediate part of the field. Lamar is 26th out of 33 qualifying quarterbacks in downfield pass rate. I think it's still predictable. And you got OBJ injured. You got Bateman is out. Like, it's the same thing every year with the Ravens, just a bunch of injuries. They have to, go back to the same guys year in and year out. They're starting Melvin Gordon, or they might be starting Melvin Gordon depending on Gus Edwards' health. So it is really tough. We thought that Lamar might have like a passing ceiling this year. That's not the case right now. I'm not saying it can't be later this year, maybe, but right now that is not the case. Lamar has to get there with rushing, which last week, to be fair, he did.
But what is up with these Ravens injuries every single year? I just really don't understand.
I mean, I think that's part of why they look miserable. Is that like, I mean, some of it maybe is like training staff. I'm sure training staffs can do better and facilities can do better than worse, or better than other teams. Teams can be better and worse at like keeping their players healthy. But to some degree, they obviously are having bad luck over and over and over again. And over a large enough sample, someone will come up with snake eyes a bunch of times in a row. That has to be a miserable experience to be Lamar out there. And you're like, Bateman's been playing great in training camp or whatever. We're going to get him going. Oh my God, J.K. Dobbins finally healthy. And then you go out there and like in week 3, it's Nelson Aguilar and Melvin Gordon. Like that probably is like legitimately a very frustrating experience.
They have to stop practicing on like that sawdust practice field. And sure, they quote, it's just southern grass and it just turns that color and it's not actually sawdust. They need to play on real grass. I think, was it Zoysia? Some southern grass. And I went viral.
Southern Maryland's not in the South.
I know they grew. The Ravens installed this like southern type grass at their practice facility.
Oh, really?
And it turns like deep like brown. It looks horrible.
They
and
put like rusty nails on the field before to like help.
When people kept getting injured
last
year, they were like the pictures of their practice facility were going viral because it looked like they were just playing on dirt.
It looks like when the Raiders would play in the A's stadium or a baseball park, and they literally would run across the infield. That's what the Raiders' normal grass looks, or that's what the Ravens' normal grass looks like at practice. It's hideous.
Nothing more about the Ravens grass, though, Kyle. Was week 3 the start of something for Deshaun Watson, who got off to a bit of a shaky start, tried to commit one of the worst turnovers by any player in football history.
Can you describe the play? Because it's incredible. Quickly, please.
Well, he was falling backwards and then threw the ball backwards 11 yards. And then was very, very lucky that a running back was there to retrieve it. It's like something you'd see in college. Was it the start of something for him? Amari Cooper, he's got a good connection with. They cannot establish a second weapon, though. Nothing has happened with David Njoku. They keep trying to make Elijah Moore happen, and it is not happening. It was a QB 11 day, though, for Deshaun Watson. What were the takeaways?
Yeah, I mean, he looked, it's for my money, the best outside of that one play. If you just take the totality, even including that one play, everything else was incredible. I think it was like 26 of 33. I think his highest passing yards with the Browns. And overall, to me, just looked like his best game in Cleveland. But as you talked about, this is going to be quite the ugly game. It's 40 total, as you said, that has come down since opening. But the Browns are favorites in that game, meaning they will probably get to run the football a decent bit. And the Ravens have been a really strong team, top 10 in pass EPA. So it would make sense, at least for the Browns you can at least envision a world in which they want to lean into their ground game. And it's just one good game from Watson so far. I'm not going to, swing too much in the other direction of, oh, he's fixed now. And this doesn't look like a game that is exciting in any fashion for either side. So I'm not too optimistic on his specific week 4 outlook, though seeing week 3 is absolutely what had to happen for this team. After obviously Watson looks terrible in his debut, what was like 6 games or whatever last year. And then it continues in week 1 and 2. And you're thinking the most heinous, like this franchise is doomed given what they have given up to get him. Week 3 is what they needed. I just think fantasy wise, week 4 outlook is pretty meh.
It's true. It's not the good place to get a hot streak started. By the way, it's Bermuda grass that they practice on. It turns unsightly in the winter. Any Jerome Ford concern? Not really. 40-14 outsnapped. Kareem Hunt being an old man already has 2 different injuries. Anything to add beyond that, you guys?
Well, I did have Jerome Ford in the bad part of the regression files this week, so I guess
it was all touchdown based in week 3, excuse me, but he was out there like in every important situation, totally dominated snaps. What was
he did? Yeah, well, I mean, it's just outside of that long run that he had, and I hate to be this guy, but I'm going to be this guy. Outside of the long run that he had against Pittsburgh after Nick Chubb went down with an injury, he's done nothing. He's done nothing. Like he's been really, really very like below average. And he's only running around on half the team's dropbacks. So I don't know. I feel like Kareem Hunt, if he is not super dinged up, I know he has the groin and the ribs. So maybe
The
I'm
shoulder,
overstating
the
it.
foot, the back.
But I do think that Jerome Ford seems like the kind of guy who could leave the door open for someone else to come in and not take the lead back role, but to split it up in a way that's not great for fantasy.
We shall see. I'm not worried yet, though. The Kansas City Chiefs travel to New Jersey as 9.5-point favorites against the crumbling New York Jets. Kyle, have we spotted any interesting usage trends with these Chiefs pass catchers yet? It's been only 3 games, but on the other hand, it's been 3 games, and I feel like we still have no idea what to expect in the targets department for the pass catchers catching balls from the greatest quarterback of the 21st century.
Yeah, no, there's nothing useful here. Move on. Why are you still? I mean, like, you can hold Sky Moore, I think, if you want, but frankly, I'm totally fine if you need to cut him for like literally Devontae Parker or Kendrick Bourne, because those guys are actually doing something at least. Whereas Sky ranks 59th in yards per route run. He's second on the team in routes, but that doesn't mean anything if you can't put up any yards on those routes. MVS is 74th in yards per route run, and he leads the team in routes. The players that are at least through 3 games looking more exciting are Justin Watson and Rashee Rice, both top 20 in routes, yards per route run, and they're not the top 2 receivers. So, and Kadarius Toney is running no routes and actually isn't even efficient on a per route basis, still drawing a ton of targets. But
sure, he's good at something, though.
We'll see. He's good at getting schemed the ball. Especially, he's been good at doing stuff with the ball in his hands in previous seasons. He's not really even doing much of that right now. So, and he's still nicked up with the toe issue, which whatever. So no, don't play a single one of these guys. If I have to roster one of them, it's actually Rashee Rice. I think he's maybe legit good, and you just hope the routes follow.
With Toney, I think the reason he's not even doing like the cool stuff anymore is every time he made some insanely sick cut, his like calf would like snap off the bone, and he's putting a lot of force on those muscles. Denny, is there any Garrett Wilson hope in a game where the Jets should be trailing for close to 60 minutes? Do we like comeback game script for Zach Wilson and Garrett Wilson, or does that just make sacks more likely, turnovers more likely, no hope more likely?
There's no hope, Pat, but there is cope.
Okay.
And I think
I'm listening.
What'd you say?
I said I'm listening because I might have to start him.
And the cope is that Garrett Wilson, who has just dominated air yards and target share this season, it's so bleak to say that. It's just like it's the same thing.
Trevor Siemian
with all these guys. The issue here is that the Chiefs are among the league leaders in pressure rate against quarterbacks, and Zach Wilson. Let me tell you a little bit about how Zach Wilson has performed under pressure. First of all, he's been pressured on 51% of his dropbacks this year. That's tops in the league. He's completed 36% of those attempts for a whopping 3.7 yards per attempt. Okay. It's just nothing can develop. This offensive line is bad. No team is afraid of the run. Okay. So they just everybody crowds the line of scrimmage.
Green in shambles.
Oh man. Well, honestly though,
sorry, Pat.
Listen, in an alternate universe where Aaron Rodgers doesn't tear his Achilles in the fourth play of the season, I think Breece Hall goes berserk.
I know, it's haunting.
I think you guys really lucked out. You guys saved yourselves on this one.
No, I'm not taking the dub on that because it's haunting. He is a special player who got totally screwed.
Breece Hall is the RB1 overall. Garrett Wilson is a top 3 wide receiver in fantasy. It's that it all would have happened, and now it's just gone. Like, you probably shouldn't be starting Garrett Wilson here, which is just devastating. Yeah,
I don't think he's hardly startable. It's like Pat, you said, you point out, like, most of garbage time is you get into garbage time because your quarterback performs poorly, you get behind, and then you're in a very obvious passing spot where it's easy to defend you. You don't have the threat of the run. Teams aren't putting 8 guys in the box and giving you one-on-one on the outside. So being down isn't going to help you unless it's truly prevent, which teams aren't really doing. Like, they aren't just giving it up, right? For the most part, they're just trying to accurately defend you, and they know your only option is to pass. So you know what Zach Wilson doesn't need? to have a very obvious spot where someone knows he's going to throw the football and a good defense in terms of pressure. The Chiefs are overall 5th in EPA per dropback as a defense. This is they mostly are with Zach Wilson, but another dreadful spot. I mean, Garrett Wilson is startable in that, like, you can throw out 50 names of guys. I'm like, sure, put him in your flex, but he's in that range of like, there might be someone better on the wire this week for you.
Man, that is so bleak. The Chiefs have held up pretty well against the run too. So even if they try to play like true keep away ball, probably not likely to find much success there. The New York Jets, we are very sad about our New York Jets skill players. The Seahawks and Giants meet up Monday evening in a 47.5 total pick'em. Denny Carter, how are things unfolding in the Seahawks receiver core? I'll ask you once again about your JSN tweet and pointing out the very, very poor yards per out run.
Yeah. Games. Look, I'm not trying to pile on JSN, who is clearly like very frustrated on the sideline. I saw a clip of Geno Smith trying to cheer him up on the sideline after, I don't know, he dropped a pass or maybe he was intercepted or something. And so I'm sure that JSN one day will be good, will be a good NFL receiver. I don't see the path right now. We talked a little bit about this on Tuesday. I'll just reiterate that the Seahawks are having 3 wide receivers on the field at the 7th lowest rate in the league, which means that JSN's 60% route rate is not a fluke. Like that can't go anywhere. That's stuck. Okay. Can't do much, 60%. And also with a low ADOT, there's just no path to upside here.
Low ADOT. It's like sub 5 or sub 3. It is only, I mean, he's like extra routes Kadarius Toney, but the one we're seeing right now, where you're like, he's not even really like breaking off the long plays. It's just a few scheme touches at the line of scrimmage every week, and that's it. And that's just not enough.
Seahawks fans have told me that things will get better when the offensive line is healthier.
That's what every team says. I feel like it really was a simple. How was this guy supposed to produce behind Tyler Lockett and DK?
Yeah, it really.
Why is anyone surprised that he's not?
It really is. And just getting to Lockett and Metcalf, all of their opportunity numbers are like strikingly similar. Like I was just looking across them, like, oh, it's the same thing across the board. The one thing that jumps out, guys, Tyler Lockett leads the team with 7 end zone targets to DK Metcalf's 2 end zone targets.
He's been converting way fewer of his targets overall so far this year. Tyler Lockett, he's been kind of inefficient. He's probably bound to regress to the mean.
Yeah, I agree.
Kyle, is there anything to cling to with these Giants pass catchers? The Giants' plan, man, in week 3 was like, let's make Darren Waller 40-year-old Kyle Pitts. Seems to not be a very good plan. Anything to cling to here?
Yeah, not really. I mean, we're seeing pretty reasonable, I believe, both 17% target shares for Paris Campbell and Darius Slayton, but Paris Campbell is just getting targets near the line of scrimmage.
And now really Robinson's back to fight for those targets.
Yeah, that was my you skipped ahead a little bit. That was my little nugget. Is Darius Slayton is actually running a real receiver role on the outside with a 17% target share. I'm not sure how much that is worth with Daniel Jones under center, but it's a high-scoring game. There's maybe some juice there, more for DFS purposes if you're a real sicko. One thing I had, Wan'Dale Robinson targeted on over half of his routes in his first game back.
Let's go.
He's got something. I think he's a legit good player. We saw last year in his very sort of brief moment in the sun, he looked like, he looks not too distant from what we want from Kadarius Toney, where he's like truly dynamic with the ball in his hands, but then can also, maybe we'll see, but I think he can probably run more routes in a given week than Toney. So I hope they ramp him up, but it was still in a very minimal share of the team's routes. You're not playing him this week. It would have to be a leap for you to even consider him playing next week. Stash him, though, in deep leagues. There's some juice with him.
I just wrote Matt Breida, LOL. We don't really have to talk about that, though.
Can I just say one thing real quick on this game? No one has been targeted. No defense has been targeted more heavily from the slot than the Seahawks this year. Just want to put that out there.
It's been a really rough schedule for the Giants, too. I mean, even the Cardinals have overachieved on defense 3 straight weeks. So it is nice to see the Giants finally get like a non-elite defense.
This is a Darren Waller smash spot. I think.
If they use him as a tight end, why are they using him as a wide receiver? That just doesn't work. Like
it was so weird because that's what happened last year.
There's some super big, slow guy on the outside. This is amazing.
It was so weird that everyone in the offseason said exactly what you're saying, but they framed it as a positive. Oh, he's going to be moved out wide in the slot.
Yeah, no, that's
but last year, he was by far his best in yards per route run as an inline tight end. And that's been who he is throughout his career. He's a legit good inline tight end. And he's like, his best seasons were when he was the most traditional tight end you've ever seen. He's good at that. He blows up that way. Then we saw Josh McDaniel come in and try and use him in some weird weapony kind of way. It doesn't work. They move on from him. And his next team really didn't seem to learn the lesson from it. So I'm with you, Pat. Like, just let him do the thing he's good at.
Let him play tight end. And the media is informing me we still have 6 games left somehow. The Rams and Colts meet up in this week's second pick'em in Indianapolis. Kyle, the Rams have looked a little less impressive with each passing week, including Puka Nakua's first mortal effort in week 3. Still a perfectly fine game. Do we like him? I can't even read what I wrote. Do we think Puka is going to bounce back against this soft Colts defense?
Yeah, we like the passing attack from the Rams, but specifically because they're a volume team. Stafford, he's not been terrible. He was truly not good last year. He's been better. He's 16th in EPA per dropback, 27th in completion percent over expected. He's good enough to make this high volume plus 6% pass rate over expected engine churn, getting our Tutu Atwell 20th round shares going, getting our Puka Nacua to still good.
Tutu Atwell is 4th in the NFL in routes.
Yeah, no, I wrote him up in my start sits. There are a lot of he's like 16th in targets. He is good. He's good. He's just, there's no scamming about it. I think he's legit good. Puka's legit really good. These guys are in spots for Tutu. It's not even a bounce back because he scored, but for more good fantasy performances. But they're somewhat hollow in terms of how they will actually affect the Rams winning football games. They're much more volume based. So Stafford, I want to like him more as like a possible streaming option, but he's just not efficient enough. And efficiency is really what's going to drive quarterback play. Like we said, Andy Dalton got to 300 yards. It only took him 60 attempts. Like, unless you get to absurd numbers, efficiency, good plays, long plays, yards after the catch is what's going to drive quarterback performance. And I don't see a ton of that happening here. Maybe he gets 300 yards, but is he really going to drop a 3 touchdown type performance? For him, it seems unlikely adjacent.
Zach Wilson, 301 yards and 81 attempts this week against the Chiefs.
Let's go.
You heard it here first. Anthony Richardson's coming back from his concussion for the Colts. Words of wisdom to pass on to the Colts passing game? With Anthony Richardson back, Michael Pittman seems to catch 8 passes no matter who the quarterback is. Josh Downs, a lot more involved than Mr. Alec Pierce.
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised to see that the team the Colts don't operate all that differently when Minshew is under center. They had a 0% pass rate over expected in week 1 with Richardson. They've been 2% under their expected pass rate with Minshew over 2 games. I think the real thing to focus on is that the Colts are playing fast. They average the 5th most offensive snaps per game. If we can keep that up, we can, I think, get okay volume for Josh Downs, who has a good matchup here for Pittman. You can keep the scammy stuff going. It's gonna all be very short kind of targets, though. Really nothing downfield for this Colts offense.
Zach Moss, Kyron Williams both play every snap. So that's the world we live in now.
Yes, Zach Moss is a really good play this week.
Get them in your fantasy lineups. The Cowboys host the Patriots as roughly touchdown home favorites, Denny. We have not seen impressive offensive football from the Cowboys so far in 2023. What in the world is going on with this passing attack? Is it just as simple as it's getting Mike McCarthy'd? Even though, like we said, he is a pass-heavy coach, but he was not an effective pass-heavy coach his final few seasons in Green Bay. Without Kellen Moore, this has just been really, really uninspiring offensive football.
Yeah, I do think that we're probably due for something of a bounce back. Dak Prescott's touchdown rate is 2.9% through.
He's been bad, man. He has been bad.
Yeah, it's not been good. But his career mark is 5%. He's had years in his career where it's near 7%. The red zone offense has been miserable. It's funny because it's like, a red zone offense is bad when morning talk shows are talking about it. Like not just us nerds are talking about it, but like like super mainstream morning shows are like, hey, this red zone offense of the Cowboys is pretty terrible.
Preposterous. Sorry, they start shouting.
I mean, when you have Stephen A. talking about a red zone offense, it's got to be bad, folks.
Like when he just watched like 4 straight weeks of Steve Sarkisian.
Yep. So I do think it'll get better. Tony Pollard has actually done very little with 24.
All right, here he goes. Here he goes, Kyle. Here he goes.
10-yard line. No, listen, wait a sec. Wait, I'm not truthing. I'm saying that the explosion is coming. Like
he's
Tony
regressing.
Pollard,
he's regressing.
Yes, Tony Pollard, I think, could go bananas in this spot.
Please. Yes. The Patriots have been weirdly soft against the run for like a while now, too.
We need it, man.
We really need that, Tony, if you're listening.
Yeah, we need it. Like, we cannot have the haters who are like, oh, he can't get there on more work. He needs the Zeke in this backfield.
No.
So far, those people have like, if you're looking at the metrics I look at, they're winning the argument to some degree. Pollard has still been a like above average back in terms of efficiency, but he hasn't been Tony Pollard. The good news from a fantasy angle is we really don't care if he's on pace to set the NFL record for red zone carries by like 50 carries.
Yeah.
We are getting a 2-score game this week.
And the first time in his career, he's handled 60 plus carries in any 3-game span. Safe to say the Cowboys have faith in what Tony Pollard can do between the tackles. Kyle, earlier you mentioned Kendrick Bourne and Devontae Parker as players you would maybe play over someone else. I forget who. Just tell us why you sort of subtly praised the Patriots receivers.
Yeah, in terms of their outside guys, the non-Juju and Demario Douglas guys, they're running a ton of routes. We have Devontae Parker since coming back in week 2, 97% of the routes. He just does not leave the field. And then Kendrick Bourne, we said last week, was fairly unplayable because he had dropped like 56% of the routes. Last week that climbed to 70.
No, cloned is right.
No. Producer Adam, cut it out. Hurry, Adam.
It's cloned.
No, cut it, Adam, please. Climbed to 76%. Like we were concerned that as fun as Kendrick Bourne going out and not only earning a lot of targets on a per route basis, but earning deep targets, racking up some of the most air yards in the NFL, that isn't particularly sustainable on half the routes. On 75+% of the routes, we're back to usable territory. That could be a thing that ebbs and flows with how much to tight end, and if they use multiple running backs, how much those things come and go, because it seems like Parker is locked into every snap. But in general, that was a good turn for a guy who was like pretty exciting as far as completely undrafted for fantasy purposes. And the Patriots are playing at just a breakneck pace. They're averaging like 23 seconds per play. After last year, that was somewhere around 29. Right now, they're top 5 in the NFL, I believe, in just total plays per game. And Mac Jones is top 5 in pass attempts per game. This is like a fun PPR scam offense. It's as fun of a PPR scam offense as it gets in terms of everyone gets to touch the ball a lot. No one's like particularly great, but when you get like a bunch of targets, when you can have 2 backs who are already over, I think 30 touches, like 30 and 50 touches for the 2 backs, like you're going to get a lot of usable, if not the not most exciting games from multiple guys in every week.
We would be remiss if we did not mention that it's a revenge game for Mr. Ezekiel Elliott against the Dallas Cowboys, who is cutting uncomfortably heavily into Ramondre Stevenson's workload. Denny, it's not Jover, right? Ramondre's still running a ton of routes. Yeah, no, I mean through 3 weeks, Stevenson has 46 carries to 28 carries for Ezekiel Elliott. Stevenson is running a route on about 60% of the dropbacks, 24%. For Stevenson. I looked at the inside the 10 numbers thinking that Elliott would have the edge. That he does not. Stevenson has 2 inside the 10 rushing attempts to zero. Zeke has 0 so far through week 3. But they're playing a really vulnerable Dallas rush defense. We just saw the Cowboys get kind of gashed by the Cardinals by James Conner last week. I know what Kyle was saying about, the pass volume with the Patriots and stuff. They are under their expected pass rate on the year. I would think that they would turn to the right if they can here, like if they can keep pace. I don't see any reason why the Patriots can't win this game. Do you guys? No, I think 6.5 is a hefty line. That is a lot of respect for the Dallas football Cowboys. That's a lot. That's to a team that just got
beat by the freaking
I'm going to
Cardinals.
say we see Micah Parsons like Stone Cold Steve Austin, Mac Jones within the first drive. And you go, I see why there's a touchdown now. I see it. But I'm saying that's what
Andy literally stunned him.
But yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I mean, I'm not going to bore. I've decided. I made the executive call. I'm not going to bore everybody with the numbers. Just suffice it to say that the Cowboys' run defense is really bad. I think that Stevenson and Zeke are in good spots. I think, guys, I really do think they're going to scheme up a touchdown for Ezekiel.
I'll entertain someone with a less boring stat of you can just imagine them. And it looks like they're putting a 20-foot ladder in the backfield. And what is that? Micah Parsons is climbing it. Oh, he's going down. Mac Jones is down.
By the way, it's Micah, Kyle.
Is it?
I think so, right?
He's allowed to change it. He's had enough name-changing performances.
He's maybe changed it.
He could change it at any moment.
You know what felt like a lot of points, by the way, is 14 for the 49ers against the Cardinals, who just beat the Cowboys. But I keep underestimating the 49ers, and they keep ruthlessly proving me wrong. Fresh off upsetting the Cowboys, though, the Cardinals are getting no love, as the aforementioned 2-touchdown dogs in Santa Clara. Kyle, is there anything to like in this Cardinals offense? Kind of the little train that could. I mean, James Conner's been something to like. Tell people about the Cardinals offense.
Yeah, I mean, you pointed it out. James Conner and Marquise Brown are just complete focal points of the team. James Conner is 4th in total touches among running backs, and it hasn't hurt his efficiency. He's actually having a pretty strong season in terms of efficiency, which is always the concern with a sort of, in the offseason, we'll call them like dead zone type of running backs. You lock them in for a bunch of touches, but as their efficiency drains, they can hardly do much with their touches, and then they eventually lose them. Not the James Conner case. He's been strong both through the air and on the ground. And then Marquise Brown, a 29% target share. So when the team succeeds, which has actually been much more often than we were expecting, you know who's getting the ball. It's on the ground, James Conner, and through the air, Marquise Brown. We'll see what we get from Rondale Moore. He's still not running a full complement of routes, but at least on his carry, and he's getting more targets now. Looks good. I still don't think I'm playing him, but I don't hate the idea of stashing him. But also, I'm someone who is kind of a sucker for Rondale Moore coming out of college. So for this game, Marquise Brown, a trillion targets, and James Conner, they're probably still running a lot because they're a more like philosophically balanced team, if you ask me.
Then on the other side, Deebo Samuel's now hurt right as Brandon Ayuk comes back. We don't know if Deebo is going to sit out, but what is the 49ers passing attack outlook this week? 2 touchdown home favorites. They're somehow already really banged up with their pass catchers. What can we tell folks about the Niners pass catchers?
I mean, Deebo, if Deebo misses, I think, you give a bump to Ayuk. I think you give a big bump to Kittle. I do think that it's like, and what does Hayden Wings call it? An eruption spot. This is what Hayden calls it.
Vesuvius spot.
Yes. For Kittle. And also, look, don't be freaked out by like a big spread. People, I feel like fantasy managers overthink that. Oh, it's a big spread. I can't play the Niners because they're going to pull their guys in the third quarter, the fourth quarter. Look, if they get there,
Denny, they're going to drop 40 points. How can we play the guys who are going to drop 40 points?
Exactly. Also, the Cardinals are going to win. So anyway, next game.
I love it.
I wasn't ready for that.
Shanny gets exposed every year sooner or later. Why not? Why not this week?
Why not?
Why not? Cardinals do overachieve every week. I said last week that the 49ers line was too high and that the Giants were going to cover. Then I became a corn cob very quickly.
But you have never been owned.
I was never been owned. I just corn cobbed right there on X.com during Thursday night football. The Chargers and Raiders meet up in this week's Everyone is Hurt Bowl. For the Chargers, Denny, that includes number 2 receiver Mike Williams. How do we expect things to shake out behind Keenan Allen? We may have already talked about this, and we may have already sadly agreed it was Josh Palmer.
Well, kind of, but I mean, this team runs a lot of 3 wide receiver sets. They're going to, like Daniel Popper, the athletic reporter for the Chargers, said they're going to have to play Quentin Johnston, even if they don't want to. Apparently, he's very raw in many regards. So I think Johnston is going to go from a 30% route rate to something like 50 or 60% here. Still very volatile downfield type stuff. Look, whether you like Josh Palmer or not, you got to accept that he's going to see 8 to 10 targets here. You just got to accept it. It's going to happen.
You do just have to accept it. I mean, Quentin Johnston, is he worth like rostering?
Yeah, I think so.
End of bench stash, right?
Yep.
The narratives have been so concerning on him, and the narratives from his own coaching staff. So It's not like it's like fantasy narratives. That's been concerning, but I think he should be 100% rostered just as we try to see what happens.
Yeah, there have been concerns about like he doesn't know where to line up, and that's tough.
Yeah, that is very tough. Kyle Jacoby Myers has had 2 excellent outings. Is this Raiders receiver core big enough for the 2 of Myers and Devontae Adams? That is assuming Jimmy Garoppolo is healthy. His status is highly, highly questionable for week 4.
Yeah, in fact, the Raiders receiver core is small enough for the 2 of them. They don't have a receiver or tight end with a target share above 5% that is not one of the 2 guys you just named. They literally do not throw the ball to a single living soul that isn't Josh Jacobs or, more importantly, Jacoby Myers, Devontae Adams. If Hunter Renfrow is out there and able to earn targets, which he's out there a bit, doesn't earn targets, or Michael Mayer was out there and earning targets, we'd probably have to say something has to give. Nothing has to give if they throw to 2 players. That's exactly what they're doing so far. So no, I think this is perfectly fine. I have Myers ranked as like cleanly in the wide receiver 2 range because like his usage looks like a lot of other teams' wide receiver 1s. It's a very Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins type of situation here.
The Steelers 3-point road favorites against the Houston Texans. That seems high to me. Every line is incorrect until it's always exactly correct. Is that line though smart, Kyle, with the way CJ Stroud has been playing? And who do we prefer between Nico Collins and Tank Dell? Tank Dell has been winning both the usage and production war since Noah Brown landed on injured reserve, but we still like Nico Collins' box score after 3 games.
Yeah, in terms of the receivers, I think I maybe said I would lean towards Nico Collins on the waiver wire Q&A. I think I flipped my tune. I mean, over the past 2 weeks, since you said Noah Brown went on IR, Tank Dell leads the 2, Nico Collins and Tank Dell, in route rate. He leads them in target share, and that's in both individual weeks and in the aggregate in both weeks. He also leads the team, or at least, he leads the team as well in air yard share. He is really looking like a wide receiver 1 for his own team, and he's not being like scheme touches in a way that I think he's literally like 5'8", 165. You would think, okay, that guy's getting a lot of Rondale Moore type of stuff. No, he's like legit playing an outside receiver role. He's moving the sticks. This is what a team's legit 1 looks like, especially in the more modern NFL, where you don't have to have every guy look like Mike Evans. So for the receivers, slight lean towards Tank Dell. They're both pretty good plays, honestly. And yeah, the passing game looks like it should hold up quite well. I will say we still have CJ Stroud sack taking issues, and this is a very strong Pittsburgh pass rush. And the Texans' offensive line is just in tatters right now. So I think it'll probably be a high volume, Rams type of spot. Actually, a lot like Matthew Stafford getting repeatedly taken down by Trey Hendrickson. We're probably going to see some of that. But on the other hand, when they get the ball off, Stroud is a legit good passer already.
So hopefully a little more escapability, at least from the rookie CJ Stroud, who has not dealt with nearly as many injuries in his career as Matthew Stafford. Denny, what is going on with Dameon Pierce? He was a pretty controversial summer player. Kind of more people on the negative side of the ledger, probably, when it came to Dameon Pierce. That has come true so far. Hasn't hit 60% of the snaps in any given week. He actually played 54% of the snaps in week 3, but the really bad news is that was his season high. So what can we tell people about Dameon Pierce and the Texans rushing attack?
Yeah, I mean, the touches have been okay. I mean, week 1 was rough, only 13 touches in that one. But, week 2, he gets 17 touches. Week 3, he gets 17 touches. He scores a touchdown. Dameon Pierce, the only Texans running back to see a touch inside the 10-yard line through 3 weeks. So he's getting those high value looks as well. The Steelers defense or rush defense, I should say, has been somewhat vulnerable without their big nose tackle, whose name I now forget.
The guy,
the big dude.
What, Hayward?
Cam Hayward.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is he a nose tackle?
Is he? Well, he's an interior lineman, correct?
I thought he was more on the outside, but he is probably an interior. We don't know ball. Let's just be real. Don't know anything about it. Never watched it.
I actually think he rotates in and out. He's an interior.
Yeah, he's very good. Is the point?
So they've been allowing over 5.5 yards per carry without Hayward in there. I think Pierce is just a boring floor play. You're hoping for a touchdown. He's a little bit involved in the pass game. You're starting him. If you drafted him, you got to start him. There's nobody else you can start over him.
He's a Jeffrey Simmons type dominator, by the way. Cam Hayward, I do think.
Yeah,
most of it comes from the interior of the line. I do know.
Yeah, he's like a 4-3 inside lineman. He's not like true nose tackle. He's more of a 4-3 D tackle. if I remember correctly, growing in Pittsburgh, if you can't cite exactly what position, like if he's nose or like D right tackle, you get bludgeoned. So having Yinzer in my blood, I know this. Yeah, the thing with Pierce is that like he plays on a team that when they're at their best, very clearly, is when they're passing. Which in terms of being probably going to lose more games, they're going to be doing a lot of passing. So there aren't red zone opportunities for him, but he's also been as expected as he was last year, struggling as a receiver. He's 42nd in yards per route run. So he's getting a ton of empty value touches, like in terms of percentage of his total touches, it's most of them. So I don't think, and he's not even as efficient as he was last year. He was an incredible tackle breaker last year. We're not seeing as much of that. There's just not a lot of hope to point to outside of the fact that if Stroud continues to look good, it should put them in more advantageous situations at some point. But as 3-point dogs, this doesn't look like the game.
Anyone have anything to say about the Steelers offense, or can we just like stop talking about the Steelers offense?
Najee Harris looks suspiciously good in all of the nerd metrics. I keep tweeting them out because it's funny. Yeah. I don't believe them in my heart, but I don't play with my heart, so
it's not good. It's not good for us Najee doubters that he's actually looking good.
No, he is.
Yeah, he's like top.
He might be looking good on the spreadsheet. He's not looking good on the field.
Yeah, that's what the thing I just said was that I can't believe it in my heart. Although I don't like. I'm not a heart player. I'm not a field player. I'm just reading the CSVs.
Absolutely horrific when you watch real football still. So the haters do have that going for them. Expected to be without Derek Carr. The Saints are party to this week's lowest over-under at a ghastly 39.5 with the Bucs. Denny, why is Jameis Winston not a fun streamer anymore? Is Chris Olave still an okay wide receiver 1 for week 4?
Olave, wide receiver 1, I don't know. I mean, probably just outside.
I kept him in there.
I mean, really bad environment game-wise. And yeah, I think that Jameis Winston is clearly under instructions to not mess up. Like,
if he goes more than 55 miles an hour, the bus be blown.
Yeah. If he goes 56, he's in trouble. Yeah. 6.5 yards per target last week in relief of Derek Carr. He's like a desperation streamer, a super flex option, but I don't see the upside here just because of the way they're going to manage this. And also, look, no one, Pat doesn't want to talk about it, and he might cut my mic.
Yeah, I should. I won't though.
But you know what's coming.
Don't know what's coming.
8 carries for Taysom Hill.
I don't know that.
Alvin
Kamara is back.
Pete Carmichael or Dennis Allen, one of the two, said they're not considering playing him more at tight end or at quarterback. I don't know. I mean, that's also would be smart games.
What position does this guy play? He's not a tight end. He's not a quarterback. He's not a wide receiver.
He takes the majority of his snaps at any individual position. Like the most snaps he plays is only a plurality. So he is truly the most positionless player.
Can we just be done with this?
It feels like we should be. I will say, in defense of Jameis, 2 years ago, he totally was on the bus blows up if you go under, well, in this case, it would be over 55 type of situation. But last year, he averaged 280 passing yards, was throwing picks with reckless abandon and taking sacks. We got, for 3 games, the whole Jameis Winston experience. And to me, some of that feels like the truth in that you just can't take that dog out of Jameis Winston. He will always be, to some degree, who he is. And actually, Chris Olave averaged more fantasy points in his games with Jameis than without. So I'm a little more excited about QB2 without the desperation tag. Still not the preferred streamer, but not dead to rights type of streaming.
Well, in the show, what are realistic Alvin Kamara expectations? Because I feel like we don't quite know what his normal role is going to be this year. That he might get returned finally to more like the 12 to 14 touch Alvin Kamara role instead of the 20 to 25 where he's just miscast.
I'm concerned it's the 20 to 25 thing because it's what we've seen for 2 consecutive seasons, and we didn't see it change as the team moved on from Sean Payton. So I'm expecting more of the.
They signed a free agent. They used a day 2 pick. The free agent is, of course, injured right now, but I do think they don't want that to be the case. But maybe they can't with Jamal Williams hurt right now.
Yeah, maybe it's a they can't kind of thing. Maybe it was a they can't kind of thing for the past 2 years, but at least we saw last year and the year before are his 2 highest seasons in total attempts per game and his 2 lowest seasons in receptions per game. Last year, it was his lowest usage on third downs. It was his lowest usage in terms of routes run as a wide receiver. This is probably a game where you actually don't mind that he's used as a running back because they're favorites against a Bucs team, albeit 2-1. Feels quite fraudulent. So, I mean, that's probably a good thing for it may not matter this week, but it has to revert. There is a hurdle to clear in that you can't have him be an 18 carry, 3 catch kind of guy. The 14 carries Alvin Kamara is the best one.
Denny, do you have a Kamara take?
So far this season, the Saints are second to last in the league in target rate to running backs. They're highest in the league in target rate to wide receivers. I do think that Kamara returning dings that target availability for Olave and Michael Thomas. I don't know, in equal proportion, probably not.
Yeah, it's Jover for Michael Thomas. Doesn't matter for Olave.
I do feel like it's gonna hurt big time for old Michael.
Yeah, old Michael, literally
Slant boy.
Oh, come on.
It's the best nickname ever. It's so good.
For a while, I was like, am I allowed to say that? Like, should I not be saying? I don't know.
I mean, I wouldn't ever. I hope he doesn't hear this, obviously.
God.
He will take it very personally. I take personally the show being over, but it's over. Check out my rankings on the site. Check out the regression files from Denny. Check out 32 stats from Kyle Dvorchak. Check out Denny's Q&A on Fridays. Check out Kyle and I's Q&A on Mondays. Check out everything over the weekend where we will break down and cover every single game in excruciating detail. For Denny Carter, Kyle Dvorchak, I'm Patrick Daugherty. Thank you for listening. We'll be back later.